Open your refrigerator tonight and just look at it for a second. Cold air rolls out. A light clicks on. And there it all sits. Milk. Eggs. Last night's leftovers. Half an onion. Some meat you keep meaning to cook. It waits for you. Quietly. Safely. Like time forgot it was there. That machine humming in your kitchen is about 100 years old. That's it. For almost the entire human story, there was no cold box. There was just you, a pile of food, and a clock you could not see. If you misread that clock, if you were wrong by even one day, the meal you saved could be the last one you ever ate. So ancient people learned to fight the clock with sun, smoke, cold, and one trick so strange it still sounds like a mistake. Here's how they won. Picture a hunt that actually went well. A group of ancient people brings down a large animal, something big, something that took real planning and real risk to kill. Standing over it right now, they are richer than they have been in weeks. There is more meat in front of them than the whole group could eat in 3 days if they tried. We look at that and see a feast. They looked at it and saw a clock starting to tick. Because that animal was not food yet, it was a mountain of calories that had already begun to die a second time. The moment its heart stopped, the meat started changing. And in warm weather, it changed fast. Whatever they could not deal with quickly would turn dangerous within days. Sometimes sooner, and the rot never worked alone. It came with a whole crew. Heat, pushing the change faster with every hour of sun. Water in the flesh itself, feeding the decay from the inside. Flies, finding the kill from an absurd distance and turning it into a nursery by sundown. And the smell, rolling out across the valley like a dinner bell, calling in wolves, hyenas, big cats. Everything out there with teeth and patience. 4 enemies, all of them visible, all of them fightable. You could wave off flies. You could stand guard against wolves. You could drag the meat into shade. It was the 5th enemy that should scare you. This one had no eyes to look into and no body to fight. They could smell it when it worked. They could taste it when they got unlucky. They could watch a strong, healthy person eat the wrong piece and be flat on the ground by nightfall. Shaking and sick. Sometimes worse. But they could never point at it. They had no way to know it was alive. They had no way to know their food was being eaten out from under them by billions of tiny living things. Too small to see. That left poison behind as they worked. And here is the part that should stop you cold. The tools to actually understand that invisible world, to give the enemy a name and a face, would not arrive until the age of modern science. Which means everything you are about to see in this video, every method, every trick, every strange invention was figured out completely blind. These people were fighting an enemy they could not see and could not name. They just knew it was real. Because they could count the people it took from them. So they learned the only way anyone could, by watching, by remembering, by paying attention to which food made you strong and which food made you sick, and passing that down from old mouths to young ears until the whole group simply knew it. And out of all that loss, they carved one rule, one law, older than any language you have ever heard. written straight into your nose and your gut before you were born. When food turns, you walk away. That rule was absolute. That rule was sacred. Breaking it could kill you. And everyone knew someone it had killed. Remember that rule, because in about 10 minutes, you are going to watch somebody break it. And by breaking it, they are going to change the course of human history. But first, understand the real shape of the problem. It was never the hunger itself. Hungry people can hunt, gather fish, die, and push through. The thing that haunted them was stranger than hunger. Their first real enemy was never hunger. It was abundance. Because the most dangerous thing a hungry group of people could stumble onto was more food than they could eat before it turned on them. Here is the thing. Nobody told those people. The thing. They had to figure out one hard season at a time. Rot is not magic. Rot needs things. It needs water. It needs warmth. It needs time. Take away even one of those, and the whole process grinds into slow motion. That is the entire secret hiding under every method in this story. Ancient people could not kill an enemy they could not see, so they did the next best thing. They robbed it. They took away everything it needed to live. And this was never one invention from one genius in one place. Different groups in different climates across thousands and thousands of years kept running into the same problem and kept finding their own answers. A group near ice had one kind of solution. A group by the sea had another. A group on hot, windy plains had another. What you are about to see is not a single discovery. It is humanity, everywhere, waging the same quiet war. The first thing they stole was water. They had no idea why it worked. They just kept seeing the same simple truth. Wet food died fast. Dry food lasted. It did not last forever. And it did not work in every season. But it lasted longer. And longer was everything. So they leaned into it hard. They cut meat into thin strips and hung it where the sun and wind could pull the moisture out. Day after day, until what was left was dark, tough, and light enough to carry for miles. You have eaten this. It is sitting in gas stations all over America right now. We call it jerky. Much later, the native peoples of the North American plains would take that same idea and perfect it into something remarkable. Dried meat, pounded together with fat and berries, packed into a dense brick of pure survival that could sit for months and keep a person alive and moving. It worked so well that centuries afterward, explorers heading into the Arctic carried it on some of the harshest expeditions on record. Because nobody had invented anything better for the job. And much later still, up in the freezing north, people ran the same play with fish. They hung cod out in the cold sea air until it went stiff as a board. Stackable storabla. And ready to come back to life in water months down the line. That dried fish helped fuel some of the boldest sea voyages of its age. Whole crews sailed into open, unknown water on the back of a fish somebody left out to dry. So that was the first theft. Water. The second thing they went after was warmth. And this is where it gets clever. Because the planet had already built the refrigerator. They just had to find it. In cold country. That part was easy. Snow, ice, frozen ground. A whole frozen world you could tuck food into and trust. But Even in warmer places, the cold was hiding if you knew where to look. Cave air stayed cool all year. A running stream stayed cold enough to buy you days. A deep pit dug in the shade held a chill the open air never touched. People learned to read their own land for pockets of cold and use them like a pantry. And then there were the people who stopped searching for cold and decided to make it. Come stand in ancient Persia for a minute, in a desert that bakes under a punishing sun, and watch one worker walk out into the dark about an hour before dawn. His breath fogs. The sand that burned his feet at noon is now cold enough to ache. He kneels at the edge of a shallow pool of water, taps the surface, and it answers back hard. Ice, actual ice, in the desert, frozen overnight under a clear black sky that pulled the heat away. He and the others move fast, cracking it into slabs, hauling it down into deep, thick-walled chambers in the earth, sealing it away before the sun climbs up to take it back. They will do this night after night, all winter long. And in the middle of summer, when the air outside shimmers with heat, someone will walk down those same steps, reach out, and touch winter. These people figured out how to store winter in the desert. No engines. No electricity. Just mud brick, cold night skies, and an almost unfair amount of cleverness. We love to picture ancient people as barely hanging on. Every once in a while, you catch them doing something like this, and you realize some of them were running circles around what we assume they could do. The third theft came off the fire. Everybody knows fire cooks. But somewhere along the way, people noticed that meat hanging in the smoke lasted longer than meat that did not. The smoke dried the surface, and it left something behind. A coating the rot did not like, painted on by the fire itself. Smoke was never a miracle on its own. It worked best alongside the drying and the thin cutting and somebody tending the fire through the night. But it was one more weapon. One more way to make their food a worse home for the enemy. Now, step back and look at what they had built. Sun, cold, smoke, 3 weapons. And every single one of them fights the same way. By holding the enemy back. Slow it down. Dry it out. Freeze it. Push it off. For thousands of generations. That was the entire war. Keep the rot away from the food. And keep the food away from the rot. Every rule pointed in the same direction. Every instinct agreed. Rot is death. Fight it or run from it. And then, somewhere, on some ordinary day nobody wrote down, one hungry person stood over a pot of food that had already turned. The smell was sharp. The taste would be sour. The law said, this food kills. 10,000 generations had paid in blood to learn that law. They ate it anyway. They should have died. Everything their people knew said so. Every rule, every warning, every story passed down from old mouths to young ears said that sour smell was a death sentence. 10,000 generations had paid for that law in funerals. The food had turned. The food was the enemy now. You walk away. They ate it. And nothing happened. No sickness by nightfall. No shaking. No poison working through the body in the dark. Just a person sitting there, completely fine, with a strange, sharp taste in their mouth. And here is the part that would have felt like actual witchcraft. The food was good, tangy, different, alive in a way fresh food never was. But the real shock came later, because that changed food did something impossible. It lasted weeks past the point where the fresh version would have turned lethal. It just sat there, sour and strong and safe. The deadliest thing in their world had somehow flipped sides. They had no way to know what actually happened inside that pot. They could not know that the invisible world is not one enemy but a crowd, and that some members of that crowd are on our side. They could not know that friendly little organisms had gotten to the food first, moved in, soured everything, and in doing so, locked the door against the killers. All they knew was the result. Most rot was death, but this rot, this one strange kind, stood guard over the food like a watchdog. Sit with how big that is. Every weapon so far worked by fighting the enemy. Drying fought it. Cold fought it. Smoke fought it. This was something else entirely. This was walking into enemy territory and recruiting. Humans had just turned part of the invisible world against the rest of it. They could not see the army they had hired. They could not name it, but they learned to command it anyway. We call it fermentation. They just called it survival. And it almost certainly did not happen once. It happened over and over, in different places, with different foods, accidents becoming habits and habits becoming rules. A pot forgotten in the corner, a pit of fish packed too tight for air, a basket of fruit gone fizzy at the bottom. Each time, somebody hungry enough or brave enough found out that the line between spoiled and transformed was real. And the knowledge spread, the only way knowledge could back then. Someone survived. Someone remembered. Someone taught. And ancient people ran further with this than anyone expected. At a site in what is now Sweden, researchers uncovered signs that people were souring and storing fish on a massive scale more than 9,000 years ago. This was not a family stashing a few extra dinners. This was a huge haul, far more than anyone could eat fresh, deliberately prepared and packed away for later. Stop and think about what that takes. Planning, coordination, real technical know-how, held in common and passed down. These were supposedly simple hunter-gatherers, people we tend to picture living hand to mouth. They were running a food operation sophisticated enough to bank an entire season. And they were doing it thousands of years before anyone built a pyramid. Once you know this trick exists, you start seeing it everywhere in the human story. Much later, the Romans fell so hard for it that it became an empire-wide obsession. Their most beloved seasoning. The flavor they splashed on nearly everything. The sauce that wealthy families paid serious money for was fish, salted and left to break down for weeks into a rich, savory liquid. They built entire production facilities for it along their coasts. They shipped it across the known world in clay jars. The mightiest civilization of its age. An empire of marble and armies and laws. And its favorite gourmet flavor was seafood that had been very carefully, very deliberately allowed to go off. And before you laugh too hard at Rome, understand that people have recreated it in modern kitchens. And it tastes fantastic. Deep, savory, rich, The same flavor you love in soy sauce and aged cheese and a good broth. The Romans were not crazy. They were early. Which brings us to your kitchen. Because you eat expertly controlled rot constantly. And you love it. That sharp cheddar in your fridge is milk that was handed over to the right organisms on purpose and allowed to transform. Yogurt is milk soured deliberately and stopped at the perfect moment. Sauerkraut and kimchi are vegetables packed down tight and left to sour in their own juices. A move so useful that culture after culture around the world invented a version of it on their own. Sourdough rises because of a living culture that bakers feed and protect and hand down, sometimes for generations. None of that is fresh food. All of it is food that somebody aimed the rot at, guided it, and stopped it right where it turned delicious. You are eating beautifully, deliberately, expertly spoiled food. And you love it. But do not let the cheese aisle fool you into thinking this was ever casual. Because the ancient version of this craft came with a hard edge. The line between the good kind of rotten and the deadly kind is thin. And it is invisible. The same dark, airless conditions that let one pot turn safe could let another pot turn lethal. And sometimes the deadly version gave no warning at all. There was no thermometer to check. There was no test to run. There was only the way you were taught. Which container, how long, what it should smell like at every stage, what it should look like before anyone takes the first bite. Those instructions were survival, written into memory long before anything could be written down. And people followed them the way you follow rules that have buried someone you know, done exactly right. This craft carried whole communities through the winter, done carelessly. It could turn on the very people it was meant to feed, so they did it exactly right. And they taught their children to do it exactly right. And something enormous happened along the way, almost without anyone noticing. Food stopped being just a thing you found in the world and raced to eat before it died. Food became something people made, shaped, aged, transformed on purpose and on schedule. And the moment a group of humans could reliably turn a mountain of fish in autumn into safe meals in the dead of winter, a door swung open that would change everything about how human beings live. Because now, for the first time, food could wait. Imagine coming back to a place you left weeks ago. The trees look different now. The air has gone cold. And the easy food of autumn is gone with it. But somebody in your group remembers the flat stones near the stream, the one shaped like a shoulder, the small mark cut into the bark just above it. They kneel, and they dig, and there it is. Fish from another season, soured and safe, packed away by hands that knew exactly what they were doing. Dinner, waiting underground, exactly where the past left it for you. Feel what that moment actually is. For the first time in the history of our species, the past could feed the future, because a full store of preserved food is not really food. It is time. It is tomorrow's hunger, already handled. And once humans could hold time in their hands, the whole shape of human life started to bend around it. For most of the deep past, a group basically ate what the day gave them. A good hunt, a lucky harvest, a river full of fish, and everybody ate well. A bad stretch, and everybody went hungry together. Living like that keeps you on a very short leash. You can never wander far from the next meal, because there is no next meal until you go out and win it all over again. Stored food, snap that leash. For some groups, it meant they could finally stay. If your food can wait for you, you can settle into a good spot. Near water. Near the routes the animals run. Near the place the fish come back to every year. And you can stop chasing every single meal across the land. For other groups, stored food did the opposite and made moving smarter. They could bury supplies along their routes, little hidden stashes tucked into the landscape, and travel light between them, knowing dinner was already waiting up ahead. Keeping food did not force everyone into villages overnight. What it did was hand every group a brand new kind of freedom. The freedom to plan. And planning changed what a human mind had to hold. A cache was only useful if someone remembered it. Where it was, what was inside, how long it had been down there, which signs meant it was still good, and which signs meant the invisible thief had beaten you to it. In a world with no writing, memory itself became infrastructure. The old people of a group were not just carrying stories by the fire. They were carrying maps. Maps of buried meals, of lean seasons, of which pit fed the family 3 winters ago and which one went bad. Some of the most valuable things a human being could own were locations and lessons stored inside a skull. But here is the strange twist waiting at the end of this war. The moment humans finally got ahead of the invisible thief, the moment food could sit safely in the ground for months, a brand new thief showed up. This one had 2 legs. Because a pit full of dried fish is not just dinner anymore. It is wealth. Real physical wealth. Sitting in the ground. Worth something to every hungry person who knows about it. And wealth pulls at people in ways fresh meat never did. A store of food was worth guarding. It was worth sharing carefully. To bind a neighbor to you. It was worth trading for tools, for help, for peace. And sometimes, when winters ran long and stores ran short, it was worth taking. So much of what came later, ownership and generosity, alliances and raids, trade routes and locked doors, has a route running straight down into the first holes in the ground where somebody's dinner sat waiting. We fought the rot for the right to keep our food, then we had to figure out how to live with each other once we could. Which brings this whole story back to that box humming in your kitchen right now. Open it one more time. Look at the milk staying quietly sweet. Week after week. The leftovers sitting there. Patient and safe. The meat holding steady in the cold. It feels like the most ordinary thing you own. It is actually the newest weapon in one of the oldest wars our species has ever fought. Your refrigerator did not invent the idea of saving food. It just automated it. Everything those ancient people figured out is still sitting in your kitchen. Wearing new clothes. The jerky in the gas station is the meat they hung in the sun and wind. The cheese and the yogurt are the milk they handed over to the good invaders. The pickles and the kimchi in your fridge door are the vegetables they packed down and soured on purpose. And the cold box itself is the cave. The mountain stream, the winter buried under the desert, finally shrunk down and plugged into your wall. And in case you think this war is ancient history, it is not. The thief is still out there. It never surrendered. And it never will. Unplug that box for 3 days and you will meet it yourself. The exact same enemy your ancestors faced in the dark. Still hungry. Still invisible. Still waiting for the cold to fail. The war never ended. We just got so good at fighting it that we forgot we were in it. So tonight, when you open that door and the cold air rolls out and the light clicks on, take half a second and actually see it. That everyday reach into the fridge is the far end of an unbroken line. A line running back through ice cut from desert pools before dawn, through fish waiting underground for winter, through meat swaying in the smoke of a fire somebody tended all night, all the way back to a group of people standing over a fresh kill as the sun went down, feeling a clock they could not see start to tick, and refusing to lose. Across an almost unimaginable stretch of time, humans learned how to make food last. You inherited the whole victory, and it fits in a box in your kitchen. Every time you open that door, you are winning a war you never even knew you were in.